Howdy all you delicious people! I am here today to review 3 Super Sentai pilots and maybe more. Maybe at some point I may go on and actually just watch some episodes of one specific Sentai, or at some point I'll just mostly, probably for right now, continue watching pilots. Because I have watched so much of Power Rangers that I thought, well, I really want to watch something that feels more brand new but then is to also be questionably familiar. And so, really, with that, I was like, well, I just gotta watch Super Sentai now. I feel like I've gone on and I've uh, kept hearing people at some point bring up Super Sentai or even review certain Super Sentai uh, portions of show because you can't just call them seasons or series or whatever, because I'm not quite sure exactly what they're to be called, because if anything, if in IMDb they're just mostly to have their Sentai name, but also just have the release of year instead of just calling them season 1, season 2, and whatever. So with that said, there are a couple of people I mentioned that I probably would not have gone on and really decided to cover Sentai without seeing their stuff. But also letting everybody know I'm doing something different because I'm not doing the exact same thing. But anyways, I had gone on and seen that the Power Ranger from Wild Force, the Lunar Wolf Ranger, it seems is to have his own YouTube channel. I think it's called the Lunar Wolf, and he is going on and just kind of covering a lot of kind of barrage of stuff. But then also it seems that he was covering a trailer from one of the Sentai seasons. So I'm like, okay, cool. And all the more reason for me to want to go on and mention him, but then also probably saying that more than likely I probably would not have gone on and gone into Sentai if I hadn't seen some of the stuff he was doing. Brennan Mejia had gone on to cover a Power Rangers crossover and mentioned what stuff was Sentai and what stuff was the original stuff from that crossover. And also at some point talking about how Dino Charge was a popular Sentai uh, thing for that. So at some point I'll probably check out the Dino Charge Sentai equivalent and maybe see how that goes. Then lastly, I'm to go on and say that I had been watching quite a lot, and I'm sure by the comments you would know that, of a channel called Beauty Babalea Babalaba. I know I was gonna mispronounce this, so more than likely in the description, I will leave a link in the description for this channel, because if you are a fan of Power Rangers, you will probably go on and like this lady's content, because it is to not only be, of course, mostly covering Power Ranger stuff, but then also covering Magi Ranger, seemingly currently is second recording, and who knows if maybe more, for whatever reasons. But anyways, other than that, yeah, let's go on and let's talk about these alternative names of what people are to possibly be familiar with calling it Power Rangers, but I will end up calling it Super Sentai because it is the alternative. So, with that said, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the alternative is to actually be called Dinosaur Squadron Zyuranger. I honestly want to call it Zyuranger because in my brain it just feels weird calling it Zyuranger. It just does. But more than likely, throughout this entire review, I will probably just call it Zyuranger anyways. And really, it's kind of interesting to see a show that I am so familiar with be so drastically different when we get to the Sentai. Not saying that it's weird. Like, I'm just like, okay, like there's some interesting visuals going on here, and I can see where they took some things uh and kind of put them in other seasons kind of similar to this show. And yeah, like there were things within this pilot episode that I'm like, why wasn't this in Mighty Morphin? Why couldn't I have seen this in Mighty Morphin? Like some of the ideas were kind of cool. But so weirdly enough, in Mighty Morphin, as well as also in the next thing that I'm gonna talk about here, it seems that they were missing their Red Ranger, and eventually the Red Ranger like appears within the show and has to like pretty much save the day. And I thought that was like, okay, like that is an interesting way to do a pilot episode, because it seems most of like Power Ranger seasons, like the way they start a lot of pilots is like somebody's missing, like we have to go on and we have to find uh either like a group, or we have to find uh, a Red Ranger or team, or we have to go on and eventually at some point in the show get to a Sixth Ranger, and then that's the ooh wow cool, like he's the best thing of the show, or possibly the worst thing of the show, considering whichever show eventually or season you watch. Because sometimes I'm like, man, the Sixth Ranger did not save that season. It really didn't. But if anything, talking about the next kind of pilot, anyways, this one for an American pronouncing is Mashin, but I'm gonna say Machine Sentai Kiramager. So this is a Sentai exclusive show, and I honestly thought this was interesting when watching a YouTube trailer of this show a while ago, and I was like, oh wow, like these Power Rangers, they have something to do with these crystals, and like they actually become these like gems with these crystals, and I was like, okay, that's a really cool idea. And then also watching the episode, like it mentions that the Power Rangers like have to like shine, and I was like, wow, that's actually a really cool idea, because what I've always ever wanted to do was to have a Power Ranger that, like, I would say doesn't have like a definitive color. Like, you would have to call this Ranger like a Shine Ranger or a Mirror Ranger, because at some point, like, this specific Ranger can go on and be seemingly any color of Ranger. Like, if there isn't a red on the field, like, the Shine Ranger could be the Red Ranger for the field, or the Pink Ranger, or the Yellow Ranger, or the Green, or whoever isn't on the field at that point. They can go on and adjust and kind of cover up some kind of gap. But then also, it can be its own thing and just kind of do something unique, and maybe like copy or be similar to the villains in a way, and kind of just copy their fight style. Kind of like for Marvel, how they have like Taskmaster, and I thought that would just be kind of something interesting and or cool, and just something unique. Uh, but anyways, and then also like I would hope that this Mirror or Shine Ranger would come from like some like mirror world, where like we kind of have like the equivalent of putties that I would call like reflectors, that would kind of copy the Rangers, or just kind of do something just kind of interesting or cool or whatever with the way that they're just looked or dressed or whatever. It would just be kind of fun, interesting Power Rangers episodes, I feel. But anyways, um, this episode kind of felt more to me like Kamen Rider than Power Rangers, because I've seen quite a bit of Kamen Rider pilots, and I get it. It's like, oh well, Kamen Rider and Sentai, they're from this. I get it. I understand that. I'm just saying that this just felt like a Kamen Rider kind of thing to me. and then also like the whole like drawing thing kind of remind me of like Beetleborgs in a way. If you guys watch the later seasons of Beetleborgs, you might understand what I mean. I also liked how like the Zords like were customizable. It's not just one straight up just one Zord. Like one Red Ranger could have like a car or a fire truck or what. So like a lot of people could probably just say like, well, the Zords are basically Lightspeed Rescue. Yeah, no, because again, like it depends on the situation, which I kind of thought was fascinating. But anyways, uh, I'm going too much into this too soon. And then so, lastly, we have Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, Shinkenger. Hopefully that's how to pronounce it. Uh, this Samurai Sentai counterpart feels really just like a normal Power Rangers episode to me. And also, I can see within this pilot like what they cherry picked from to put into Power Rangers Samurai. And also, yeah, like I feel like watching the Power Rangers Samurai pilot, I'm like, man, that is just a good pilot. So to go on and see the Sentai version, I'm like, it's not as good as Power Rangers Samurai, but like it is a pretty interesting looking show, and there's nothing wrong about it. Like throughout these pilot episodes, there's nothing wrong with any one of these pilots. They're all interesting in their own right, and also I liked um just where they were going. There was something just so like, okay, this may be off-putting to some people, but like I was like, okay, all right, like I can get into this. uh, I honestly thought that for the the Zyuranger, I did think it was kind of weird that we have these like kind of ancient tribal uh characters that end up having to go through these dinosaur doors and needing to appear to save the earth that they have been so like phantom zoned or like frozen away from. And I just thought that that was kind of strange. But then also like there was just something visually just like creative about it, and I can kind of see why eventually in later seasons of Mighty Morphin they went with stuff like Ninjetti and stuff like that, because it looked um somewhat similar to like the tribal outfits that the Power Rangers were wearing, uh, or the Power Rangers, the Sentais were wearing in the dinosaur show, because they had their own little outfits instead of just kind of wearing the common like suit and tie American uh, like normal clothes wardrobe. So also with the Mashin uh Kiramager, I thought that one like felt just like the average way to put together a pilot. Like when you have the whole like kind of school thing that transitions into like, okay, like here's all the battle, and the Red Ranger is going to meet up with the rest of the team. And it was kind of baffling and weird how all of a sudden there wasn't like secret identities with these rangers. It was just like, oh, okay, well, like, hey, like, I know who this one is and I know who that one is because they're all famous. But then also, like, it's just kind of weird that these people just reveal themselves right in front of this uh, person that they're not quite sure is going to be the Red Ranger in this episode, but eventually he does go on to do so. For Samurai, we get similar kind of footing as Power Ranger Samurai. Samurai, we of course have this just kind of over cocky or confident, just kind of Red Ranger, and he's like, "Well, I don't really need a team, but I guess I should have one because it makes sense." And we then come in to have these samurai rangers who seem to already either have their origamis or are going to get a origami and answer the call of being a ranger, and they all have just kind of their own goofy ways of how they eventually come to meet up with the Red Ranger, who they call My Lord, which I thought was kind of weird. We also have in Machine Kiramager how they end up saying the word miracle at some point in the episode, and I thought that was kind of weird. And then also you have Zyuranger, which feel very uncomfortable just saying that just consistently within this review. But so, other than that, like I can probably understand it's about the culture, it's about the this, it's about the that, and there's probably only so many ways that you can say things or write things, but also it just kind of seemed kind of weird. Just miracles and lords and whatever. But also looking at like medieval times kind of shows and movies and whatever, like they would kind of have stuff like that being said somewhere. But moving on. Also, I really didn't like in Samurai how the rest of the Rangers were kind of licking the boot of the Red Ranger, and how like a lot of them were just kind of saying how the Red Ranger is either the best or the strongest or the whatever, and I'm just kind of like, oh, like debatable. But if anyways, like they have to just kind of prove how like powerful or strong or whatever that the Red Ranger is, because sometimes the Red Ranger needs to go on and save the day. But anyways, so with that said, I think if I've kind of teed up most of these episodes, where can you go on and watch this? Because not every single one of these things are easily available on Tubi, Tubi. Well, I had gone through Google and searched a way to try and watch Super Sentai. And I ended up coming on a website, yes, a website called Toku555. TOKU 555. And I'm assuming you probably have to specifically like search also for Super Sentai. But anyways, with that, hopefully you'll be able to watch a good amount of Power Rangers. Here is the weird, goofy thing though. When I was clicking into the episodes, or just kind of clicking away for any reason, like uh like a lot of times like it would kind of kick me out, or it would kind of go into other thing. I would have to like click back, and like eventually at some point, like it took a couple of clicks before I can go on and actually watch per episode to episode, and I just thought that was annoying, really weird. But maybe you have a different kind of setup or a different kind of thing that maybe doesn't have that problem. But again, just be leery about how you're kind of clicking onto this site and what you click into and whatever. Other than that, there is rarely or scarcely not much of a way that you can watch Sentai unless you get like the disc sets, which I've also seen someone do at some point. So hey, if you want to go on and find possibly a region 1 or region whatever your region is to be able to watch Super Sentai, then by all means try and go on and do that, if especially you're a person who speaks English and probably needs English subs, because you won't find a dubbed version of Sentai, I'm sure, out there, which is kind of sad. I wish Sentai could just be dubbed, because for how long that this kind of show has been out there. But then also, if you kind of look at a lot of anime, a lot of it is just to, of course, be subbed as well, unless it gets really popular and then it gets English dubbed. But anyways, let's move on. So I think it's about that time to say that, like, every one of these episodes, every one of these pilots are good in their own right. There's not a definitive, like, I hated this strongly kind of pilot feel. So I would go and check every one of these out to just kind of see something new and something different. And also just be baffled and confused why there isn't a Zordon or an Alpha 5 in the Dinosaur Zyuranger equivalent. I'm so sad. Why didn't they just have that Zordon and that Alpha 5? Why? Because they're doing something drastically different and new, and they have this mysterious mage or sage guy called Barza, and Rita is called Bandora, and Golar is called Grisor, and I felt like I'm like, dude, are we cousins? Goldar and your Sentai counterpart, are we relatives? Not quite sure. I'll have to look into that more. But anyways, I think it's about that time to just break down this, because what else much could I say? Uh, if anything here, there's going to be a jumbled mess of either cast list somewhere on here, or stuff that is to be used in the show, like weapons or whatever. So really off the cuff, I'm going to try my best to come up with names of things, but then also there's going to be a part of me that is just going to be like this. Because it is to, of course, not be quite all that easy for me to kind of come up with all of these names off the cuff, because I'm not as familiar with them as, say, the Power Rangers things, because I've either seen them multiple times throughout the years, or I've gone on to see multiple episodes of them, so on and so forth. So, if anything, I wanted to cover the Sentai exclusive pilot episode first, and then I'll kind of bounce around a little bit. And I think that the Samurai one will probably be done last. And again, there is no purposeful reason for doing any of this. It's not like, oh, I should probably say the more popular one for last, or oh, I don't. No, like, it's whatever I watched first, or it's just kind of whatever, just kind of like, it's to be the most easy to get the stuff that I've kind of put notes on or whatever first. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to break down these 3 pilot episodes. And I know if you've seen the breakdown of Power Rangers episodes where I'd go through every little detail and every little thing, and I would have a whole note thing where I'd say, Billy said this, and Alpha said that, and Zordon farted, and whatever. Like, I'm not doing that with this one. This one I'm going on, and, like, yeah, I have, like, kind of picture things that I'm connecting with me trying to go on and kind of rattle this all off. But then also, I also loved in the Sentai how on the side of things, they actually have freaking names for stuff. Wow, what a change. Like, I would go through Power Rangers, I'm like, okay, what's the name of this? Who's this character? What's going on? I'm so confused. And I would have to eventually get to know who these characters are, and it would get annoying. Like, how would I know what the command center is? Oh, I would just have to figure that out. Oh, how do I know what Serpentera is? Well, I guess I eventually have to have them say the name of it, and then that's Serpentera. Okay, great. Like, for the Sentai, most of the stuff slaps the name somewhere. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. So, with that said, I'm going to go on and I'm going to cover the Machine Sentai Kiramager, the Crystal Rangers. So, in the very beginning of this, we would have this just kind of like huge tower like thing, and this thing ends up being like the Earth Defense Organization, uh, Karat, and we have these two characters, and they're in the war room. So we have this director who's talking to this princess, and this princess seems to be from another just kind of world where they had gone on to uh, create this like world made of crystals, and it seems that only one person who within that world would be the most like creative, and they end up going on and saying like this character is like the the leader, or the like the worshipped, or god of that place. And that place, of course, is Crystallia. I believe that's how it's pronounced. But so, and of course, that character is King Oroden. Uh, and so we have Princess Bushina, and she's talking to this director, and she, of course, is like realizing that there is this giant monster that is wreaking havoc over the town, and it weirdly on its head is to have this faucet, and they purposely do that because the villainous characters had realized on Earth that there was this thing that a sink would have called a faucet, and they're like, "Oh my god, that's an interesting thing." Just realized that a thing of water just comes out of this faucet and just sprays all over. And oh my, yeah, like they go into a whole bit of dialogue, the villains do, as they're to make you realize how they came up with the big, huge faucet monster that's kind of just towering Godzilla like over this town. So, so we have the director, who is Hakatamami. Hakatamami. I'm just gonna call him the director because it's freaking easier. And so, also, this dude has some sweet threads. Man, the director has just some sweet get up. I want some of that freaking get up. It's like he's wearing like nines on his arms. I'm like, okay, like is that a jersey? Like, is it just like, did they just give him something to just throw on? Like, does the outfit represent something? A little confused. But so the director and the princess is going on, and she's like, oh my god, like we don't have our final warrior, which is to be the ranger. Like, we don't have our red ranger yet. And the director's like, oh hey, like come on, don't be concerned. And like, if anything, like we're just gonna have the rangers, and like they'll fight this foe. Like it'll be all good. It'll be chicken babies. So we then transition to who the possible potential of Red Ranger is going to be, which is just some dude, and he's in a classroom. And oddly enough, he has kind of this like ginger red hair. I don't know what it is about like that kind of color of hair, that it seems has to be like kind of main characters at some point. Like, and also like I didn't think that a hair color like that would just be so common, but maybe it's like unique. I don't know. But anyways, I digress. Logically, in my brain, like I would just look at a lot of Common Rider characters and just be like, man, that hair color is just kind of just similar. But anyways, so we have Atsuta, and he's in class, and he is just kind of going throughout his day, and we would find that his class ends up getting interrupted by this emergency broadcast, or this emergency kind of announcement that says that everybody like kind of needs to duck for cover to be safe, because there, of course, to be this giant monster attack that I think they do end up giving this thing a name, I believe, which is to actually be uh, Jakuchi Hildang. And really, to me, I'm just saying giant faucet monster, because rationally in my brain, every time that they talk about this thing, they just call it a giant monster. They don't actually definitively say name there. But I just want to call it faucet monster because it sounds easier. So again, back at this school. So Atsuta is going on and looking out the window, as well as his other students are. And instead of him going on and running for cover like seemingly the rest of the people are, he's going on and he's sketching this thing. And we find out throughout this episode that this guy likes to draw things. He likes to do drawings. If you guys remember the Mike Myers Saturday Night Live sketch, you'll remember where that comes from. But so anyways, we have this guy who sketches this, and all of a sudden this like crystal comes over the screen, and he says the word insparkleration, like inspiration, but sparkle and inspiration just jam together, and he keeps saying that throughout the episode. It's fairly weird, but then also it seems that they have to have their own weird, goofy, like things in this episode to just kind of say, like, instead of mentality, they have this alternative word to it. It's very just strange, but there's nothing wrong with that. So, also, uh, when the princess was talking to the director, there was the red crystal that was also like, well, hey, like I'm coming close to finding my potential ranger, and it seems that at some point this crystal is going to go off on its own and find what is to be his bearer, or I want to say ring bearer, but that's not the actual case because it's not a Green Lantern. But it's like finding, like these crystals find the right person for the job. So, but yeah, but the flashing of this crystal goes over Atsuta's head, and he then goes on and is to just kind of continue to sketch things, and so on and so forth. But and then eventually the princess kind of like is to like, oh, it's excuse me, and then freaks out Atsuta, and eventually the princess has to talk to Atsuta, and eventually at some point starts to realize that he sketches, and that like this could be the Red Ranger. So, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, transitioning to the evil lair of Jotunheim, which I'm like, did they just rip that off from like Norse mythology? Like Jotunheim is the Thor thing, and maybe it's some just kind of specific. And then also like Jotunheim is like a frozen area where like this is just like a fogged wasteland of black and so on and so forth. So we have this villain that actually looks really, really cool. Like he has like these multiple faces, and he's going on and he's looking at the earth, and he's disgusted with it, and his name is Manchula, I believe. So Manchula is going and talking uh, to Garza. And again, more than likely, any one of these names are going to be mispronounced because I'm just looking at just the English spelling of it. So it's probably going to be ill pronounced. So Manchula, or Crunchula, my bad, Crunchula is speaking with Garza, and eventually, again, we get to the point where they talk about how Crunchula came up with the idea of this monster because of the faucet, and uh, and the hopes is to eventually go on and try to just have this kind of magic circle go and kind of destroy this planet. And there's a whole plot coming on here with these two characters. But it's also the traditional. It's like, oh yeah, you go get them. So also we have this princess who has to go on and so back with the potential Red Ranger here, and he's talking to this princess. The princess has to go on and explain her whole life story to this guy Atsuta, and goes on to explain how she was originally from the homeland Crystalia, and mentions her king and how there had been this land that had created these crystals and and so on and so forth. And so we would have this red crystal that ends up becoming giant in size, and then it's to find Atsuta. And it seems bizarrely that the princess and Atsuta go on this ride that this crystal takes them on, and then just kind of drops them off at a point where all the rest of the Rangers are at. So we find the other Rangers within this battle, not against the giant monster, but instead against these bachats, bachats, these minion warrior characters. I want to say bachats, but that's like the American pronouncing of it. I want to say bachotes, bechotes. And again, these minion characters, they're freaking violent. They're hooking people's heads with these kind of like scythe like stick things that they have, and or scythe like things that they have. And I'm like, man, this is freaking sweet. Like, how I would go on in this episode and see people's getting their head crushed, it seems, or people getting stabbed. I'm like, this is freaking awesome. I like the more violent Sentai. This is great. So we would have the Rangers fighting these minions, and while this is going on, like the Red Ranger races off to say, "Oh, hey, yeah, the Power Rangers, or the Sentais, the whatever the Rangers. Let's say the Rangers, so I can just get myself out of this. Like, oh my God, the Rangers! Let me go on and let me race off and let me just sketch all of them because that's what this guy does. So this guy is he's going on and sketching every one of the Rangers, and oddly enough, while this guy is just so close to every single one of these Rangers, and the Rangers are realizing that, like, oh, but like this guy is right here, like I need to help and protect him, and so we get one of the Rangers who ends up using their weapon as this like shield to protect um Atsuta, and then eventually when they turn around and they realize that he's not there, it's like, okay, that's a little strange. Like he just disappears, And also, like, one of the Rangers was fighting the minions and noticed that this guy Itsuto was like a really good at dodging. I think this was like the Pink Ranger. And then also we would get like the Yellow Ranger that was just getting like really annoyed. What's wrong with this guy? And so we would come to find that at some point after uh after the Rangers would go on and take down these minions, then they would have to realize that there is to of course be the faucet giant monster to also still be a threat out there. But it seems that these Rangers don't quite yet have the ability to use Zords. But also it's kind of interesting because they're changers, they're morphers. Like the morphers talk to them to get them out of danger. Like one of the Rangers, like the watch or the crystal inside the watch told them like, well, hey, dodge this, or hey, behind you. And I thought that was actually rather interesting to just kind of be this almost kind of like Jarvis for the Power Ranger kind of thing to help like them be protected in battle. I thought that was kind of interesting. But so we had the faucet giant monster thing, and the director would kind of tell the Rangers like, well, hey, like there's a certain section that has this faucet ranger, and you need to, or faucet ranger, this faucet monster, and like we definitely need you to figure out a way to take this thing out because it's creating this magic circle, and like we need you to like stop its advances post haste and whatever. So the Rangers are like, okay, well, like we gotta figure something out. So, but we still realize that there's no Red Ranger here. And then also when the Red Ranger is talking unmorphed, because he gets his morpher, and they realize, hey, you have a morpher, and he's like, well, yeah, but I'm not a ranger. Like, and so these Rangers they untransform, and it seems that Atsuta knows who they all are. He notices that the Blue Ranger is an actor, or he notices that that one of the female Rangers is I think it's the Pink Ranger is a brain surgeon or a surgeon, and the Green Ranger is a running athlete. The Yellow Ranger, he's like, don't know. And the guy has to explain that he's some like goofy esports gamer guy. And the Red Ranger's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know. So we find out who these characters are and which thing that we could be interested in them for being, just because, like, oh, hey, yeah, a character that I like an actor or whatever, like we can relate to some of these people. Anyways, um, kind of like how Kamen Rider X-Aid, like the guy is like a doctor, but then also he's this Kamen Rider thing, so it's just kind of weird, goofy mixing of interesting ideas there. So as the Rangers all morph and they go to face off this faucet giant monster, and all they're using is the weapons that they have available to them, and the Red Ranger is still just kind of looking on as the princess is to try to convince this guy that he should be the Red Ranger, or maybe he should be given back uh, the changer that he was given, because if he doesn't want to be a Red Ranger, then he doesn't have to. But the crystal is still like, no, like there's something about this guy that I think he's going to be the Red Ranger, the Red Crystal. So what happens is as the princess is to see the Red Ranger sketches, she goes on to then notice that he has a drawing of combining the gun and the sword together to make one weapon. And the princess is like, oh my god. So you saw something in the fight that if we would have just gone on and combined these two weapons together, it would have made an even more powerful thing. And the Red Ranger is like, well, yeah, I just saw that in my mind. And the princess is like, oh my god. So the princess goes on and states that only the king in her world was the only creative soul that could have come up with something to have helped the town, and all the more reason for them to have called them a king, this person. And Orodin sounds kind of like Odin in a way, also. But so, and a lot of this could probably come very similar to Norse mythology, and I just realized that now. So the princess is like, this guy has to be the Red Ranger because he's the chosen one. He's creative, and also he realized that there has to be some giant monster that has to be, or there has to be a giant monster and a giant robot to face off against it within another sketch, but the another sketch is not clearly defined of what exactly this is. But it is to, of course, be of something similar of a Megazord, and that's where the princess is like, okay, like, you need to become our Red Ranger. Like, you're the only one that's to be creative enough that knows how to defeat this thing, and by golly, you're gonna come up to uh, to realizing that too. So we have Atsuta that ends up transforming this crystal finally into a Zord he can use, which is this like red racing kind of Zord. But then at some point, the red racing Zord turns into this fire truck Zord. So similar to Lightspeed Rescue, but then again, similar but not the same because the Zord consistently adjusts into different things. Kind of like how some of the other Zord things change at some point in time for whatever the situation or writing needs it to be. So first off, as the Red Ranger is to join in on the team, he then is to see this faucet monster, and he combines the sword and gun together, and then tries to attack said uh, faucet monster. But then we turn around and have the Red Ranger decide to figure out how to create all the other Zords within these drawings, and then the Zords end up getting created out of these crystals, and all the Power Rangers get into these Zords, and they start doing these attacks to eventually this faucet monster and take it all down. Like there's this one point in the battle where the green racing Zord drives up onto the red fire truck and then just flies off. And also, there's a point where the fire truck ends up using its arm and starts kind of shucking off all these Power Ranger Zord cubes and starts to attack the faucet monster, and eventually, at some point, like within this battle, just takes this giant monster down, and then the Zords are just back and they're like, hey, we're here, we did it, like, yeah, we won this day. But there is no Megazord in this episode, bizarrely. But yeah, that's just kind of how the episode just kind of finishes off with us realizing, okay, like this guy is going to be the Ranger for the season, and at some point they're going to get to the Megazord, but eventually it's all about this Red Ranger's drawing creativity that is going to probably help them throughout this whole entire season, it seems, from the only pilot that I saw. So, with that said, that goes on to have me then next cover the uh, the Zyuranger episode. So in the very beginning of this Zyuranger episode, we would come to find that there is to be these astronauts going off to not exactly the moon. There is to seemingly be this planet Nemesis. And so we have Barza, who is to be this mysterious mage like character that is to be aware that these astronauts are traveling to this planet, and he is very concerned by the possibility that they are going to uh, open the space dumpster, if there is no other word to say what exactly this is, of Pandora and the rest of her goons. And that is exactly what ends up happening. We have a bunch of these astronauts, whether they are to be seemingly fairy of middle age or just really young kids, which I thought was just kind of interesting, uh, to just be on this space travel journey here to Nemesis. And so we would have these two astronauts that go and open this space dumpster, and we then have the introduction names of the villains, who, of course, instead of Rita is Vandora, instead of Goldar is uh, Gryffazor. Uh, Honestly, the names for Finster, Squat, and Babu are fairly strange and fairly weird to try to figure out how to pronounce. Like, especially Finster has this like long stretch of name of whatever. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, I'm just gonna call him freaking Finster because man, that name is way too long, and I'm not even sure how it's pronounced. Even though at some point they probably could have said what his name was. I'm just calling him Finster. I think I'm probably just gonna call, yeah, like Squad and Babu are just gonna be called Squad and Babu because if anything, actual names are like Babu is called Boto Bato. Isn't that just basically? Isn't that basically Babu? I'm sorry if I'm lazy. Um, I think like Squat is like book bok or something. It's a it's a it's a really hard name to pronounce. So moving on past that, and again, like the putties are called something different in certain places. Like, and sometimes they're called like putty soldiers. They call or the putties are called like golems soldiers or uh, golem high or golem he or something like that. So I'm just gonna call them golem soldiers or golem monsters. Because again, like I love the golem name. That actually is a good idea. It's just like the name is just very inconsistent wherever you kind of look it up at. But anyways, so after the space dumpster, Rita is of course wanting to seek her revenge of 170 million years of her instead of like in 3,000 years I'm free. It's time to conquer the Earth. Yeah, 170 million years, a little bit different. So we have Rita, who's just a little miffed uh, about that planet Earth. So she decides that she's going to go on and take this skyscraper and just start have it just go through an entire town and just mow people down. I'm like, oh my god, this is pretty sweet. Like we're just seeing this just skyscraper just freaking flying over town, and all these people are like, oh my god, is this Gojira? What's going on? Like I know that's the stereotypical like I just have to throw the word Godzilla in here somewhere, just because to me in my brain it's oddly funny. But then again, it might be not funny to some people. But yeah, just seeing this building just be like just floating and just thrusting through this town, I thought was just weirdly interesting to me. Cause like something that is so simple but also effective. Just kind of shows something like it also kind of reminded me of like a real Ghostbusters episode where you would just have this like whole entire episode where all of a sudden these just oddball objects are all of a sudden just like moving on their own, and then it ends up becoming that like every single one of these objects combined together into this big huge rage monster. I think the real Ghostbusters episode was like Lost in Foundry or something. But like you have this like fridge and all of these like magnetic items that all go missing, and then they combine together to be this kind of poltergeist like ghost thing, and eventually has the real Ghostbusters defeat the monster at the end with this just giant magnet. Anyways, moving on. So the building we would come to find, this skyscraper, all of a sudden just starts to lift into the air, and then we come to find that eventually it lands back on Earth and has the Bandora Palace on top of it. So I guess instead of the Bandora Palace being first onto the moon, and that's the only thing that we are to be well aware of it, instead it seems within this pilot to be on Earth first. It's kind of like in some other uh, kind of seasons of Power Rangers where we'd see like the villains kind of make their way onto planet Earth and then kind of have their own like machine empire, or they have their own kind of alternative way of either being close to Earth or having their own planet or dimension, some goofy, some something. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Anyways, so we have Bandora and we have Griffsword, Goldar, Rita. They're flying in the air. I'm like, man, this is sweet. This is dope. So we also have the mysterious sage Barza, who is just really he's really just kind of afraid, and with his giant ears, why wouldn't he be? His giant Yoda-like ears, like that can hear all these weird, goofy things going on. Why wouldn't he be? So this mysterious sage is to eventually realize that like villains are a coming. So he's gonna go on, and instead of wearing his normal street clothes garb, he's going to change into his mysterious sage garb, and eventually at some point face off against Rita, who's just kind of floating in the air while she's riding this bike. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Rita is riding this bike. She's not riding a witch's broom, and Griffsor is just flying in the air. I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't like Goldar like not wearing wings in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Or maybe he had to like regain the wings at some point because Zed gave him his wings. So I don't know what happened, but like, let me know in the comments below if you said, "Oh yeah, in this episode, Goldar lost his wings and Zed gave them back to him." Okay, great, because I don't remember. But anyways, so Bandora is flying through the air, creating this wild chaos and weird visual that's just flying in the air. And so Rita finally confronts Barza here. I'm going to call him Barza, even though I'm sure that's not pronounced that way. And the two of them duke it out briefly. Like, we have Bandora, who turns this hose into wrapping around the mysterious sage, and then the hose ends up turning into a snake, and then like Barza is fighting this thing off. It's pretty cool. So Barza realizes that he's no match against Bandora, so he realizes that he has to go into his uh his hotel building or apartment complex that he manages, because he's weirdly this just manager of this area, and he realizes that he has to go into his secret elevator to bizarrely go down to uh, level 2000 to get to his secret command center, his mysterious island that appears when he is to uh, open these elevator doors bizarrely. I don't know why it is. I don't know the exact name of what this mysterious place is, but it actually looks visually interesting. Just kind of how it's kind of like has this unusual sky to it. But anyways, so on the villain side of things, so the villains had gone on to take the space shuttle and had shrunk it to a quite possibly action figure set like size, and are going to go on to force the Rangers to try and rescue uh, these two kids that are to be in this figure sized spacecraft, because the two adult space astronauts had gotten just kind of magically just kind of um, like kind of shoved off of the Nemesis planet and are just kind of flying in orbit somewhere in space. So back with Barza here. So Barza is to go on and be in desperate need of what is to be his equivalent of Power Rangers, or in this case, Zyurangers. So he is going on one by one and taking these keys and opening these magic doors that have either some kind of phantom zone or time stopping mechanism to keep certain uh, warriors of his to just be kind of frozen in time, so they can come back when a call is desperately needed of them, so they can face off against what is to, of course, be Bandora. So, one by one, Garza opens these doors that have these sweet, just dinosaur, just door to that. And so, like, firstly, he goes on and he opens the Mammoth Ranger. He opens the Black Ranger's door, and then he goes on to all the other Rangers. And so the Rangers go on, and like any traditional Power Rangers episode, they have to go on and like say that they're like there's some tribal descendant of something, and they end up also saying their name. Weirdly enough, this isn't exactly weird. I knew this already. The Yellow Ranger of this season is a guy. In Power Rangers, the Yellow Ranger is a girl. And also, but the weirdest thing of it all is that the Yellow Ranger's name is actually just Boy, which I thought was hilarious. Cuz I'm like, well, of course, like we have just a guy who's named Boy, and that's his name. But so we have Garza, or yeah, I think his name is Barza. My bad. Barza ends up finally getting to the Tyranno Ranger, and he gets to his door, and bizarrely the red key breaks, and so they're like, what do we do? Like, what are we going to do? And so Barza is like, well, hey guys, you need to get to defending the world. Like, if anything, like I'll figure this out. Like I'll find a way to like get this door open. Like, you guys just focus on just you being warriors. That's what you guys need to do. So back with Pandora, and she's going on and looking at the kids in the show, and she's like, "Oh, I love to hear children crying and this and that," all while peeking her head out the door to realize that uh, the Jew Rangers are in these motorcycles making their way to Bandora's palace. So obviously there is no well, maybe there is like a secret identity to these Rangers, but it's not definitively like verified yet if there's actually a secret identity of the or we just realize like, hey, these guys are the Power Rangers and there's no secret to them. But I honestly never wish that there would be, but that would just be me. I think there's just more creative stories we could do without the whole secret identity thing. So moving on. So the Jew Rangers make their way to Bandora's palace, and while they're making their way there, they come to seemingly this beach, and the Rangers end up, of course, landing their way against these golems that end up at first looking like these little cute little puppet things. I'm like, oh my god, I want some golem puppets. Like, I want some putty puppets. Why can't we get some putty puppets? Motherfucker. That would be freaking cool. Like, I love how they turn into these little puppets, and then the Rangers are like, huh? And then the putties just kind of like spring from the ground and like punch the Rangers in the face. I'm like, yeah. And yeah, we get kicking and punching in the face in the show. That also is just like, man, that is sweet. We can punch and kick people in the face without any problems. And also, we can stab people and we can hurt civilians. This show was cool. So, the Rangers not only are getting a good back and forth with these golems, but then again, we then strangely just have all of a sudden Pandora appear in the sky, like as if she like comes from this like TV screen, and then just uses her wand and just blasts the Rangers, and then they go flying. And like, I'm waiting for like, I don't think that there was enough sparks in this show. I would just weirdly see at some points monsters that have like sparks in them. I'm like, okay, that just looks dangerous. But yeah, like, we're just seeing the Rangers and they're like flipping, flying, and getting blasted by Pandora. And we then realize that like these Rangers or Jew Rangers are not good enough to face off against Pandora quite yet. And they end up getting stuck in this just kind of cage, confined together in this very small cage. They're all like smushed, like as if all these people are in like a phone booth and they're like crushed together, and they're like, oh, we're imprisoned. Like, I hope someone's gonna save us. It's probably gonna end up being the one person that isn't here, probably. So back with Barza, he's going on and he's taking a cannon to the Red Ranger's door, and right next to him is this hourglass. I'm assuming that the hourglass has something to do with if he doesn't get that door open, the astronaut kids will die, or maybe the Power Rangers will lose this battle. Maybe bizarrely, because Barza is like a person that knows the future, because I feel like Zordon also had that ability where like he is technically like a time traveler, or he has some knowledge of future or something along those lines. Like maybe Barza with his hourglass has that same kind of ability to know, like, if he doesn't definitively get this door open, like all is lost. So he's using a cannon and he's trying to figure out how to freaking get this door open. And like, it's just not working. So all of a sudden, bizarrely, and this very much reminded me of Dino Fury, how like Dino Fury where like Dino Henge is, like Dino Henge had all of these like statues of all of these things that are to be similar to the Power Rangers like personas. And like that very much like that reminded me of like what was going on here. So we all of a sudden have this like Tyrannosaurus statue as well as other statues alongside it. And this Tyrannosaurus Rex just has this red eye and it blasts like as if it's like Superman, and it opens this door. And Geiki, who's the Red Ranger, he ends up appearing, and it's like, okay, well, I'm here, I come to save the day. Like we have excuse me, we have the Red Ranger. The door opens and he's like, dude, I'm freaking gonna bust some heads. I have no idea what's going on, but I guess I'm just gonna run and save the day. Whatever it is, yeah, we're just gonna do this. So, oddly enough, it seemed like where the Rangers were, like it felt like some like dark dimension like room where they were caged up, but no, they were just in the palace, and just oddly enough, like this room just looked estranged. From I guess any other part of the palace, it seems, just color wise or something of lesser significance. I'm not sure, but so we would have Geiki, who's the Red Zyuranger, who finds quite easily Bandora's palace, and it seemed that nobody was aware that he just made his way in there, and he just kind of comes flying in, gets on top of this cage, cuts the cage rope like thing, and it's to just go on and just start to free the Rangers. And this all of a sudden leads to Geiki needing to fight Grisor, Goldar, and I'm like, okay, sweet, like this is pretty awesome. Like we're getting like Grisor that flies in and is attacking the Rangers. I'm like, okay, this is a pretty sweet fight. Pretty sweet. So, but then we then have Barza that is to remind the Rangers, like, hey, dude, you need to morph at some point in time because we need some footage. Like, we need you guys in your suits at some point in this episode. Like, this show ain't gonna be lit unless you're wearing some kind of costume or some kind of helmets or something. Funny thing about Zyurangers, though, supposedly the idea of Zyurangers was that they were going to just be mythical creatures instead of dinosaurs right away. But maybe as they were like figuring out the helmet schemes and whatever, they just realized like, well, hey, how about we just mostly just do Dinosaur Rangers and then just have a dragon because people probably like dragons, right? And so like yeah, like a lot of this stuff they probably were just kind of coming off the fly or the cuff or whatever, and it just somehow worked. Even though it didn't kind of mesh or easily connect every single time with every season, still they just kind of just came up with these ideas and somehow it just worked. So Garza ends up reminding the Rangers, it's like, well, hey, like get out of here and transform. Here I have your power coins, or in this case, your medals, and he chucks them up into the air. And so all the Rangers go outside and they grab the coins, and they then simultaneously all put them in their dino bucklers, and they then go on and then they do the morph. They do the morphing sequence, the morphing sequence, and this morphing sequence way better than Mighty Morphin. I thought that this morphing sequence was freaking cool. So because like I get it that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers morphing sequence could be like colorful or like it's cool to see like the big huge and then you see the person's face in the middle and what. But I also like this Sentai morph. I think it was like, okay, it's uh like it doesn't have to be as flashy. It's just like, hey, cool, yeah, hit the buttons, and then they change. Simple and effective. So the Power Rangers all morph and they get into their pose and their whatever like goofy like thing that they have to do where they have to just like, ha, I'm here. Oh yeah, like look, I'm Crane. I'm this. I'm that. Uh, so we have the Rangers who go on to face off against Goldar and more putties. So while that's going on, we have the Pink and the Blue Ranger, and they go back into the palace to try and rescue the astronaut kids and their action figure sized space shuttle. So the two of them grab the spaceship just in the nick of time before this massive anvil lands on the spaceship. And so, after realizing that Bandora has seemingly gone on and failed this day, we then have the Dora Titan, this huge, massive gladiator looking guy that seemingly crashes his way through this wall, showing his face. And we are to realize that this is to be the uh, the thing that is to eventually garner the Zords and then future Megazord in some episode. But rationally, like, we don't actually see that within this episode because this pilot is to seemingly be a part two. Uh, because logically, I'm sure any pilot should rationally give you a cliffhanger to force you just like, oh, well, what's gonna happen? I need to see the next episode. So we then have lastly the samurai review. So it seems that the Red Ranger carries the same name from the Sentai to the Power Rangers samurai, and I thought that was cool. Like, we still have the Red Ranger who's named Shiba, or yeah, Shiba, and I thought that was cool. It's like, okay, good. Like, so at least they stuck with something for some of these names or whatever. Because really, if you probably had uh, all of these names stick with eventually everything for Power Rangers, maybe there'd be some kind of like, well, that name is really hard to pronounce, but that name is this or that. People would be very nitpicky about eventually what any number of names or any number of things anything is to be, and also any pronouncing of ways of which things are going to be, because I'm sure I've had that happen in my past. So, but regardless, the very beginning of this episode seems very familiar to the pilot episode, as we have this little kid who has this baseball and he's kind of just smacking this against this wall and trying to catch it and whatever, and he all of a sudden has this ball just land into this little gap, and so he's desperately trying to reach for it. And so there is this narrator who comes in and is talking about the void. And so the villains, it seems, in this episode are to be called seemingly the corrupt ones, or really they just have to go on and have the good guys just say like how villainous or how bad they are or whatever other goofy thing. Especially from uh Kasa Kabi or uh uh Koma, the guy who is the mentor alongside Shiba for this episode, the guy who's consistently hanging out sidekicking with the Red Ranger. So And more than likely, I'm sure I'm going to have to figure out some way to curve around the fact that I can't easily pronounce that guy's name. And so anytime you hear me say mentor, it's probably just going to be that guy. Or at some point, Sheba turns to that guy and calls him old timer. So throughout the rest of this review, I'm just going to call him old timer because it's easier for me to just get through this frickin' review. So, with that said, the kid trying to get to baseball, and then all of a sudden, we have these minion characters that appear that are to be called the Nanashi Company. These red and yellow looking monsterish minions that are to have these interesting looking swords. And uh, for the villain side of Power Ranger Samurai, very much similar to the show. And I was like, cool, like they didn't drastically change anything for this thing I felt. And also, I liked a lot of the samurai and also Power Ranger Samurai just villains anyway. So I'm like, great. Like they didn't like hugely change anything. And I think they are gonna get like a Decker kind of character somewhere in the show. I'm like, good. So like even though it's probably gonna be basically the same effing thing, like I like the fact that there is still this kind of like Jaden and Decker thing going on with this Sentai Samurai show. So that's a plus. Like I don't care if it's like basically the identically same thing. I'm okay with there still being that kind of battle between the two of those characters there because that was the best thing about Power Ranger Samurai in my brain. So, as these minions are coming in, the Nanashi uh, company, and they're looking to be fairly menacing against this little child, all of a sudden this red lion origami like miniature thing comes in, not the giant Zord thing. It kind of is like a handheld kind of origami thing. Appears and starts to attack a lot of the Nanashi. And then we have the allies coming in of uh of uh Sheba here, and that of course ends up being the old timer. And there also seems to be some kind of um black suited warriors that is to also kind of throw these like smoke pellets and stuff, and those are actually um the Kiroko, uh the servants of the Shiba clan who arrange and display cover around uh, when the Rangers transform. So yeah, I guess that's like this weird mysterious thing where you can get just a quick morphing sequence, and those guys kind of just jump in to just do this quick distraction like thing, and they immediately do that here. So we have the old timer, and he goes on and he's looking at these bad guys, and he goes on this long-winded speech about how they're evil and the corrupt ones, and he's going on and on and on. And then Sheba just turns to him and is like, "Hey man, like just quiet down, old timer. Like yeah, like you've said enough. Like we get it. They're bad guys. I'm the good guy. Let's just get to the fighting." So we have the Nanashi face off against the Red Ranger, and while this is going on, there's this like song playing in the background, and I'm not aware of it being the intro to this show or not, but I'm assuming people can go on and correct me about that if they'd like. If anything, like nothing about this intro song thing like really stuck out to me. Just be like, yeah, that should be the definitive theme of this show. Um, but then also look at a lot of the eventual Power Rangers themes that just sound the same at some point, where every one of them is just "Go Go Power Rangers," and then they just slap some names somewhere, kind of like Dino Fury, or what is to eventually be uh, figuring out how to make something slightly different, uh, like Megaforce or Samurai or what. But it's just like Go Go Power Rangers. It really just is a lot of just they stick to that formula and they just slap some goofy name somewhere, like Samurai is like Rangers together, Samurai Forever, or whatever goofy thing that is the song of that. But anyways, so not bad songs, but it's just like okay, you're just sampling off of an old song and just trying to make it new. So we then transition to after the Red Ranger is just clocking all the Nanashi. We then go where the evil lair is to be, which is just kind of this weird, just kind of unusual, like dimensional as if like place. Because it seems that these villains seem very like demonic or demon-esh, and so we have just this red, like pirate like ship that is to be just kind of floating in this unusual setting, and so and this place is uh Jadoshu. The Jadoshu are malevolent spirits living in a giant Chinese sailing ship that sails along the uh, Senzu River, able to uh, squirm their way into the world of the living. Yeah, it seems like they end up coming through some kind of like portal or almost like demon door esh like thing. I like to use the word demon door just because it sounds cool to me. But then also, I'd always ever like to just say that like Power Rangers could do some kind of weird doorway that just opens up into this either some kind of alternate dimension or just kind of some monsterish like thing, like how the real Ghostbusters had the episode of the Halloween door, same kind of thing. But so we have Shitari that is making its way onto this boat and is looking at Dayu, who is kind of just strumming along, just banjoing. And so Shitari is hoping that their leader, or Do Dokoku, uh, the big menacing, like almost devilish looking, and almost just kind of Japanese and Sentai looking, just kind of or Sentai, samurai, just kind of looking like doesn't awaken, and Shitari is hoping that Dayu is to eventually go on and figure out a way to send their leader back to sleep with her strumming away. But it seems far too late, as the leader is to, of course, awaken and realize that everything that he had fought for and died for and whatever is to all be but for nothing. And so, with of course him being upset, that then opens the door um, for then this monster to appear, and it's like, well, okay, like I guess you're gonna have to be the monster of this episode. That is to hopefully take out the Rangers, because we realize that there is to end up still being uh, the Shiba clan left that has been going on defending this planet for a number of years, and that monster ends up, of course, end up being a monster with a very unusual or goofy name, which I can't even find. And let me pause here and figure that out where it is. I believe the monster's name is Kiramager, and how the monster looks is to be like that. Oddly enough, the face is actually on the very bottom of the body, and like the top part of the body is just kind of just there. And I'm like, okay, that's like a very interesting way to kind of make a monster, and like just to make weirdly like the perspective of the monster, like you should be looking down at its legs to see its face, but you're looking at its head the whole time still, and the head is technically in a way talking, but you should be looking at the legs of this monster to hear it speak, but it just doesn't come out that way. But then also looks very reminiscent to uh, the Ooga Booga monster from the real Ghostbusters Halloween Door episode, where that monster kind of has like eyes and faces and fingers and what like all throughout the body, and just kind of looks fairly similar if you've ever gone on and you've ever seen a real Ghostbusters episode, or especially that one, which is to be the Halloween special, which so memorable of an episode, and I thoroughly enjoyed and loved that episode so much that I've seen it probably hundreds of times, to the point where I can quote so much from it, it's redonkulous. So, Kaja Morimoto, or the monster character that I will probably quickly forget the name of, even though I took a screenshot of what the name was. So, that monster is coming out to eventually attack the Rangers. So, we now have to go on and transition here and tell you, like, okay, now that you saw the Red Ranger, where are the rest of the Samurai Rangers? So, we have the Green Ranger, and or no, wait, no, we have the Blue Ranger, and the Blue Ranger is practicing this performance, and all of a sudden he is to get stopped by his father, and his father is to let him know, like, well, hey, uh, like this performance that you're gonna go on and do tonight, this is gonna be your last. I am gonna go on and hand you this now because, uh, like, this has been hand down from generation to generation, and now you deserve to get this, and you deserve to uh, defend defend us against the evils. So this ranger is going on and being handed this origami to be told that he is going to be a Power Ranger. So we then transition to see that the Pink Ranger is to all of a sudden be around this playground watching over these kids, and like these kids are just kind of grabbing onto her pockets, and we find that her origami is in one of her pockets. The other ranger, who I believe is the Green Ranger, is at some arcade somewhere, and he's playing Tekken. So I'm like, all right, like you're obviously playing Tekken, and like all these kids are around, like, okay, cool, he played Tekken, great, look at him. So, and then we also have the Yellow Ranger that is playing this flute, not a dragon dagger. She's just playing some flute and just having a swell time. So we have the God, I'm gonna seriously need to uh Kaji Kamaro. Kaji Kamaro. This monster appears alongside the Nanashi, and immediately what happens is we have this couple that is just kind of casually walking around town, and what happens is that the monster ends up picking up this guy by the leg and like just kind of flipping him upside down, And then the Nanashi, they end up taking this girl and they kind of force her down on the ground and like they're smushing her head with one of the people's foot. I'm like, all right, like violence. And as they're more and more like continuing to like wreak havoc around the town, like we actually start to see that these Nanashi are like stabbing into people, and I'm like, yeah, like you can see somebody getting stabbed and a guy like getting the sword, like not in, you're not seeing the blood and the blood everywhere. Like no, you're just seeing like the Nanashi like looking like they're stabbing into somebody, and that person like absorbing that impact and like falling some goofy way of how. Um, I'm assuming at some point like there was to have been uh, one of the Power Rangers actors was actually in a episode of Sentai, and probably at some point I may either uh, know when that is, or I probably will not think anything of it. But at some point, the the Power Rangers Dino Charge actor who will eventually end up playing Koda, he's Yoshi, also is in some point in a Sentai show, but I'm not quite sure which one that is. But man, is that cool that he ended up being in both shows. Like, I guess that's like a historical kind of thing that like that a person can go on and kind of play both. Um, but that's just kind of just a cool just trivia thing. But anyways, so we're back at Shiba. And so Shiba is with his origami, and we have his old timer that is to rush to him and confirm uh, that the corrupt ones are in town, and uh, and it's not just some normal just minion characters. It's not just the normal horde. It's just a powerful wraith like monster, and so that like kind of forces them to realize like, well, hey, like we're not just gonna go on and be able to just easily take them out with one ranger this time. Like we have to finally get to a point where we're gonna go on and get these morphers out of this like little hidden cupboard thing and realize that we have to put a team together now. But so, but we're also getting a flashback of Shiba's just kind of backstory here, where we have Shiba's father and like this home that is burning around all around them, and the father is handing his son this origami like, hey, like you're the next in the line, you're the next of our clan member that is to be the Red Ranger. So hey, like uh never forget, from now on you're the Red Ranger. So that you're the future samurai Red Ranger. Uh, but they say Shinkenger, Shinkenger, but I'm saying Ranger. So we have the old timer, and he shoots off these arrows that bizarrely end up landing as if he's freaking Hawkeye to every single one of these locations that these Rangers are present, to have just the word on it that says gather, and they, I guess, immediately know what that means. So we have the Blue Ranger that is doing this performance, and he ends up seeing the arrow that says gather, and the person turns to the ranger and is telling him like, hey, get going, like you need to leave. So he starts to run off, and eventually he wipes off his makeup. So we have, I think, the Green Ranger who goes on to be like eating something, and the arrow like hits it, and he's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I need to be going now. So, and one by one, each one of these people get these arrows, which leads like the Pink Ranger to get on uh this little thing that she ends up getting like carried by, and I don't know exactly what this called. I saw this thing on like the show Shogun too, and I'm not quite sure what this weird like. It looks like a horse and buggy like old fashioned contraption, but instead of a horse carrying this thing, like we have people uh that have like this attachment to this box, and like they're like carrying it, and I'm not exactly what. Let me know in the comments below. People know exactly what this thing is that these people are just kind of carrying a person in. I'm like, why would anybody want to do that? Like, you would imagine, yeah, that's probably like an easy way to just make money, but like that has got to be like an awful job, specifically because like who's to know like how much like a person is to really just weigh that these people are having to like carry around, and it freaking looks like it probably sucks anyways, because like it doesn't really seem like you have much to grab on to really just carry. It just seems like you're holding all this weight on your shoulders, and man, you got to be freaking strong to do that. But anyways, so it seems we have the Blue Ranger that bumps into the Pink Ranger, and I'm probably am getting easily confused uh, of the Blue and Green Ranger this whole entire review, because it looks like right now it looks like the guy in the makeup is wearing green. So is he the green or is he the blue? Uh, but then also I'm not seeing a single picture of the Blue Ranger seemingly anywhere within all the screenshots that I grabbed. So maybe I'm getting the Blue and Green Ranger completely confused throughout this entire review. Um, but so anyways, uh, regardless, I don't think it necessarily matters. Like if anything, I think I'm describing these people good enough that if I mess any color up, my bad. So I just assumed that the guy with the makeup is being handed this blue origami, who's the dragon. So, or maybe I'm completely right, and people are just like, oh no no no, you said it right. Okay, uh, and then I could just be done with this back and forthing, just sweating in my head of like, oh, did I get this wrong? Moving on, because life is short in any freaking ways. So, with that said, uh, we would have the Rangers all start to one by one meet one another within seemingly this one location. And certain people are starting to think that the guy in makeup could be their lord. And continuously, every time that they kind of bump into someone, they're thinking, oh, could that be their lord? And then eventually, a guy comes in on horseback with all the morphers because he ended up getting it from the old timer. And Sheba and his clan of people all rush out together, with Sheba being on horseback. Cool, sweet, right? Guy on horseback. It probably isn't really have been cool for the guy to have rode that horse, but still. Because if anyway, still, like I said before, like Sheba had gotten the morphers from, or the phones that are to basically be the morph. You know what I'm saying here? Uh, but so we have Sheba that joins along with the rest of the team, and so then is to go on and throw all the morphers to them and just being like, well, hey, hey guys, you are the ones that need to be the Rangers, so here's all your morphers, let's effing go, kind of thing. So the monsters are all going on and murdering people. It's freaking lit. And so we have the Rangers that all appear, and they're to have these just kind of samurai signs behind them, and it's pretty dope. And they all end up morphing. They end up doing the writing, and they fling it, and they morph into all Power Rangers. Again, if I haven't said before, I always thought it was very strange how in Power Rangers, a lot of times the Power Rangers would morph into the open, wide public. But here's the interesting thing. So, Shiba is to have, like, guys with him that actually, like, in the background of this, they're putting curtains up. Like, they're going on and they're throwing, like, these smoke pellets. They're going on and being able to protect and keep these identities of these Rangers actually secret. And I actually thought, I was like, wow, that's freaking clever. Like, I actually like that, even though it probably would not work in a Power Ranger show, because it just, to me, like, would probably come off like as goofy if all of a sudden they started to do that in Power Rangers. But like, this reminds me of the seasons where they would go on and realize, like, well, hey, like, we need to, like, talk to the communicator, or we need to morph, but, like, we can't just do it in the open. We need to go into this area that's more of a shade and then morph, and no one will probably notice. But then again, there are obviously a plethora of different times where the secret of the identity has been revealed, and there is a whole entire episode of that via the Beauty Bee channel, of which that I had possibly mentioned in the very early part of this review. Check that out again to eventually find a number of Power Rangers content as well, with secret identities being revealed on Power Rangers. And again, I will leave a link, hopefully I'll remember, of that channel so you can check it all out. Because fairly to the second recording, she did that video fairly recently. So, with that said, the Power Rangers all morph. There's a curtain behind them, like, oh my god, this is... Oh, just keep that identity secret in an interesting way. So, when the Power Rangers, or this... I want to say Power Rangers, but I know it's Sentai. So we have this Samurai Sentai Rangers, because I probably will have a problem saying the last freaking name. They go on and they attack the monster, let's just say, so I don't have to say the monster's name again. And the Shinashi company, the minions, with all these weapons. And like, we go on and we have the Red Ranger that uses the Diazanto, which is this big, huge, massive, like, throw over your shoulder, like, sword thing. And eventually he ends up tossing one of the discs on there. And also, I haven't mentioned much about any of the discs. So, we have the Rangers that have these, like, these sabers. And the saber that Shiba uses in the beginning of this episode, where he has the disc on it, is the Shinkenger. This this saber, or this sword that he puts the disc on, and he attacked all the Nanashi company. And eventually the sword becomes this huge, massive, like huge, like almost anime size, uh like sword like thing that like now like Sheba is just wielding and carrying around, which is just wild to me. I'm like, dude, that has got to be like some freaking poundage. That has probably got to weigh a good, possibly like 10, 15, maybe. And you're just like, huh. Maybe it's like, I would love like a real to size replica of that thing and then weigh it, or the actual thing itself, and then just like weigh it to see how heavy it is, and just be like, man, like, yeah, this is like 30 pounds, or this is like 20 pounds, or what. Like, think of it this way, like, I think the in the movie Ghostbusters, like the proton pack was like 30 pounds, I think, and like these guys were like complaining and lugging it around or whatever. And so, like, imagine this big, massive sword that you're lugging around, and then oftentimes you're probably having to lug it around one-handed. Like, man, like whoever these stunt doubles are, or what, like, man, are they having to get in freaking shape? So we have this massive fight scene going on, and oh yeah, and the morphers were called the Shodo phones. The Shodo phones? Shodo. But anyway, I'm not sure exactly if that's how it's pronounced. But anyway, so uh yeah, so the Rangers are having to figure out what the origami eventually can do for them. And we have the Blue Ranger that goes on and explains uh to the rest of the Rangers like what this origami can do, but like the Red Ranger is just kind of like, well, dude, your explanation is like really long-winded, because eventually, as the Red Ranger is to fight these monsters and the minion, and has this one really cool fight thing going on where the monster chucks the car and the Red Ranger slices the car in half, and then eventually takes this big massive blade and slices into the monster, seemingly killing him, but then it's like, oh no 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 no. Like, he's just gonna become big. And so that's when the Rangers have to realize that they have to call upon their Zords. So, or in this case, their origamis become giant form, because Shita or Shaiba, the Red Ranger goes on, and he is the first one to go on and call out for his origami to be giant size. And it's kind of weird how he just kind of sits in this like kind of glowing cube and he calls for it. And so he does it, and then the rest of the Rangers tend to follow. So they go on, and I believe this is yet another Megazord fight where it doesn't definitively like, or this is another Megazord kind of fight that I don't believe ends up becoming a Megazord. But by the end of it, they end up going on, and of course, as per usual, coming up with another way to take out this, to take out the, uh, to take out the, to take out the monster, because each one of them go on and do their individual attacks. Like, we have the dragon origami Zord that ends up doing its like breath blast and this and that, and so they end up coming up with a way to be able to defeat this monster. And then, so again, by this whole entire episode, they're always talking and licking the boots of the Red Ranger. And by the end of it, by the time that they have like won this battle and they have demorphed, we get the old timer that rushes back in and is saying like how masterful like this battle was, and is like grabbing on to Sheba. It's like, oh my god, you did it! Oh, you kill the corrupt ones, this and that. And so, and then he's looking at all the other Rangers and he's like, pshaw, like, get away from my Red Ranger. Like, the rest of you are just the buzzing of flies to me. Like, go away. And then so all the rest of the Rangers like, well, yeah, like that Red Ranger is so great, and we have to follow him, and they have to all like just follow the Red Ranger as they're just walking along, and that's how they kind of like finish up this episode. So with that, I'm gonna try to finish up this review because I know it's been 2 hours, and then also I'm not gonna try to figure out a way to edit this down or nothing. I'm just gonna put this out here the way it is and just be fine with it. And also realizing that I'm probably gonna just make this 2 freaking hours anyways, because more likely I'm gonna keep talking. So yeah, these episodes were fun. I tried in a very minimal way, like explain what goes on in this episode instead of going to detail, even though that's technically what I probably did anyways. But at least I didn't go into too massive of the names of every single Zord and every single, because I think, like, really, like, some of the Sentai information is not so easily available compared to Power Rangers that you can easily find. So, really, for me, like, I'm going off of the fact of, like, I hope I can be able to find this information every time. But, like, if I can't, then at least I will say, like, well, hey, like, I couldn't find anything, but, like, here's what I could find. But there was also this database thing that I found that was at like supersentai.com that I found a lot of like, okay, these are the allies, these are the names of the rangers, these are the bases, this is that, these are the weapons. And so like really if I think a problem, I'll just kind of look these things up through that database and hope that a lot of stuff is there. So uh it'll be a little bit easier to be able to go through reviews, but then also know full well that I have like just so much like Power Ranger stuff that I have to go on like, oh yeah, this is the name of this character. But anyways, I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.